What up, everyone? Welcome back to the Ben Oberg Show. Very special guest with me today, Antonio White. And here's what Antonio believes. Your sales opportunity has about 10 seconds to live or die based on how effective you are in pitching your product or service. If you're sitting here, if you're listening to this radio show, you're a business owner, you want to go into business, your business has been hit really hard with this whole COVID-19 thing, or maybe it wasn't doing so well before that, you're trying to get to the next level, whatever the case may be. If you're attempting to drive higher sales, Antonio believes there's nothing you can do that is faster and more cost-effective than improving the quality of your pitch. So Antonio, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, Ben, I appreciate it so much. You know, what you remind me of is idea of, I really call this concept 10 seconds to live. And the idea is that you actually have 10 seconds to your sales opportunity lives or dies based upon the first 30 words that come out of your mouth. And that was based on a huge data analysis program from YouTube. And the origin of that is YouTube tested people that clicked on thumbnails or headlines. And what they realized is that 20% of the audience, over millions of views, abandoned the video within the first 10 seconds of watching the video because they weren't finding what they were looking for. And so what we evaluated over time, and what I applied to sales, is this notion that if you take a lot of the things that we focus on, this concept of closing, and what we do is we close at the end of these sales very often. And so the idea is if we take the big idea, the exciting idea that we normally leave for the end and put it at the very beginning, it completely flips the scripts and increases engagement by up to 20%.
Absolutely. And I completely agree because I'm posting videos all the time on YouTube or Instagram TV. And one of the biggest things I look at is, one, the click-through rate. So is my thumbnail being clicked on? Why not? And secondly, where's my drop? It's the same with webinars. Like, where are people leaving? And it's usually if they don't get what they want in those first few seconds, they're leaving. Just like an advertisement, right? If they see a video ad, what are you going to do on YouTube? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, skip.
Boom. Exactly right. And Steve Martin actually has a great course on Masterclass. And in that course, he talks about ideas that comedians come onto the stage and they do the how you doing, and they kind of do a lot of platitudes. Steve says, never waste your opportunity for an introduction. And so he's saying, come out on stage and kill them with your first joke, because that sets the entire tone for the show. And so kind of apply that concept to any type of customer-facing introduction, whether it's video, in person, over the phone, and so on. You don't need to do a big preamble. You can just get right to the value from the customer's perspective.
Absolutely. So you've obviously been at this for quite a while. How did you get started in sales? What are some of the projects that you've worked on, some of the things that you've maybe implemented or helped companies implement?
Well, I've been doing advertising and marketing since I was a little kid in elementary school. I was a kid doing the little posters to get kids to go into the library for library book sales and bake sales in high school. So I was an artist as a young person here, always interested in graphics and design, and followed David Ogilvy and I was interested in the whole Mad Men concept before Mad Men became popular in high school. So the bake sale posters, getting people to engage and to buy early on, I really loved that aspect of it. I went to a performing arts high school, excelled in graphic design and advertising. And from there, I got design jobs right out of high school as a lithographer, and then worked with just world famous graphic designers and being involved with their process and so on at a very early age. For me, the key thing about promotions, what I've learned over time is, originally, my original idea as a designer was, I want to come up with some great idea that's mine. Over 25, 30 years of doing this, I realize here, none of that matters if the customer doesn't have the buy-in for it. So now it's really the key focus is, especially for entrepreneurs who are starting out, this idea that you have this amazing idea, this important business prospect here, and you're teaching people about this idea from your perspective rather than from your audience's perspective. And so if you can articulate your value, which is kind of, I have this 3-step perfect pitch framework that I teach people. Step number 1 is articulating your value from your prospect's perspective. And so if I have one thing that's a takeaway on this call here, it's if you can lead with value from your prospect's perspective here, you are halfway there.
Sure, absolutely. So how do you, if you were a person, like say there's somebody listening to the show right now, they're at Verizon, they're selling phones, they're selling iPhones, iPads, they are in insurance, they work at a storage unit, and the person coming in could be getting a 10 by 20 unit for $100 a month, and down the street, it's $10 less. Okay. So for people to apply what it is that you're throwing down here, what are some of the practical things that they can implement the next time a customer walks in the door where they're on the phone with them?
Number one thing, amazing question, by the way. The one thing that you can do is your mindset shift. You need to shift your mindset from sales to service. If you can focus your mindset from sales to service here, you provide yourself such a great advantage over 90% of your competition, because they're focusing on closing deals. They're focusing on sales calls versus sales connections. And so if I had to give somebody, especially somebody in that situation here, I remember as a high school kid working in a retail clothing store, this idea of worried about if I'm going to make my quota for the day versus just building relationships and building friendships. Sales did not have to be about just these raw numbers. If it's counterintuitive, the idea is that it's not these calls, it's these connections, and they help. Just like you're so amazing at your follow-up. You're so amazing at offering value from folks, and that's one of the things that I love about you, Ben. The idea is that the value so far exceeds everybody else who's out there in the game. So if you have one thing to do right now, it's offer value and be in the mindset of service. How can you serve your friend? How can you help them just like a good friend? And then you're halfway there.
I agree completely. When I was in the car business, I remember there was a guy named Ian, and he still actually works at Hyundai where I was. And if it was like, say he had a phenomenal month, he had a 20 car month in April, and then May hits around. It's towards the end of May now. And if Ian was sitting here at like 6 cars out for the month, about 2/3 way through the month, 3/4 way through, he starts freaking out and his head is spinning. And all of a sudden he can't talk to anybody. Every deal he touches falls apart because he's worried look, like I'm well beyond halfway through the month and I've got 6 deals out. Last month, this time I had 15 out, right? And so it was very easy, even for myself. You had to stop for a second, go, look, I can't put myself in that situation. I'm a 20 car a month guy, and sometimes 80% of those deals come in at the end. Sometimes it's in the beginning. You get different customers all the time. And that's when you had to like calm down for a second, put some water on your face, look yourself in the mirror, and then go, look, back to the basics, back to how can I help you? What are we here to accomplish today? Instead of, I got to get one more car out, so I get a $500 bonus, blah, 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 blah. It was just back to the basics. How can I help the client?
I love that concept here. And you're so good. And anybody selling cars or selling door to door, or even if it's candy, kids selling candy, the idea is the principles are the same. The idea is people want to buy from people that they like. People want to buy from people that they feel care about them. Such a critical concept here. And a lot of people actually do care about people, but they're too focused on the deal that they need to make. And there's so much pressure on making that deal. And the easiest thing that you can do, especially if you're having a difficult time on the phone, getting in front of people here, is this idea of service, and that you simply just want to offer value and help a friend. If you can be in the friend making business versus the cold calling business here, your life is going to change.
Absolutely. One of the things that I have always implemented is when we had people, like there's a lot of car dealerships in the Boise area. There's tons. There's 700,000-800,000 people that live here. There's huge chains, car dealerships that are selling 200, 300, 400 units a month. And when I was in the business, and I still implement this now, when I would have somebody go on a test drive, for example, it's all about what you say, right? So the normal car sales consultant would go, would you like to go on a test drive? And that's like, what the heck? You're giving them an out. You're giving them an option to say no. And so my verbiage was, great, I just got to make a copy of your license real quick, and we'll see how fast we can get pulled over by State Patrol. Last time,
I love it.
Let's see if we can beat that. And I would never not get a test drive, and sometimes it would be, I'd walk around the car, I'd open up all the doors, and they're following me. And I'm looking back grinning because I know like I'm in control there. And the last place I'd plan them is in the driver's seat. And I go, look, I'm going to hop in on the other side, just kind of go over some of the buttons and controls. So they're already sitting there. And then I ask that question instead of, would you like to go on a test drive? Of course, they're already sitting behind the seat and their foot's on the pedal. So I get that license. And even if they didn't buy, what I'd do is I'd come back out after making a copy and I just confirm this wasn't something I needed to do, but I'd say, hey, is this your mailing address? And they, oh, no, it's not. Okay, I just need to get an updated mailing address. Whether they bought or not, there would be a handwritten letter going out that day. And sometimes it was just a 45-cent stamp and a 17-cent letter that allowed me to get the deal that the other car guys wouldn't.
You understand very early on, and because you were doing that really young. How old were you when you were doing that?
19, 20.
Yeah, you're so far ahead of the game, Ben. I mean, I'm really impressed by you. The key thing that you're doing is a lot of people talk about branding, and they talk about branding, this concept of a logo or an advertisement or something like that. And I've been around for a long time, and Landor Associates was the world #1 branding firm on the planet for many, many years. They do the giant brand, like charge $1 million for doing a logo. And so they understand branding better than anybody. And what I really learned from that organization is that branding is a promise and it's an experience. Right. So branding is all about the experience. So you're branding yourself as you're showing the value, as you're bringing people around the car, as you're making the experience of buying that car fun, right? They're having a great time with you here. They're relaxed. That is critical. And what I call that is our second step with our 3-step process is incorporating emotion, building emotion into your pitch. And so if you can give people an experience, there is no faster way to get people to open up to a sale than offering them a wonderful experience that's fun and exciting and engaging and focused on service. So I love what you're doing with that. But that branding aspect here, you were doing that naturally right off the bat. And this is a great way to work with the customer.
Absolutely is. And I remember being a few weeks ago on one of your calls, and I got into the live room and I'm like, my gosh, there's 20, 30 people on here that they all have a pen and paper out. They're all listening intently to what you're saying. So you've done a phenomenal job of branding yourself. What are you doing right now with your community? Because you're growing quite a big online presence.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, one of the reasons, by the way, they had their pens and paper, because I said Big Ben's coming. Big Ben's coming. Big Ben, so y'all better get ready for Big Ben. Right, they're ready to go. And I appreciate you being on the call, by the way. What we're doing at Pitch Freaks is we're rolling out a series of training modules and components for folks based upon their skill level. So we have an incubator program that's rolling out on June 1st. We have a program called Catalyst for existing businesses that are trying to build traction, and another one, a program called Scale, which is existing businesses that are generating revenue that need to scale up. And so those are the things that we're engaged with right now, but we're really focusing on helping people get their pitch right. And if you can get your pitch right, everything else follows. Your ads follow, your ROI is incredible as a result of that. Life is a lot easier when you get your pitch right.
Absolutely. Guys, when we come back from break, Antonio and I are going to talk more about the sales process, how you can 10x your sales, how you can increase that, regardless of if you're the ice cream man going around the neighborhoods trying to sell out of your chocolate dip cones, or you're the corporate executive that needs to get more people on whatever programs that you have to offer. So all of that when we come back after this brief message.